All right. Well, next we're joined by one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. Honor to have him on the show. We appreciate it. Ken Shamrock, welcome to Pro MMA Insider, buddy.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me, man, and I appreciate that opening there. Greatest fighter of all time. Wow. Thank you.
Well, you're joined here.
We can separate the two. We can actually say the greatest NHB of all time, but, MMA is a little bit more commercial now.
Well, Ken, we're joined here. Before we get into anything, Ken, we're joined here by Carla J.
Hey, Ken, how's it going?
What's up? How you doing?
I'm doing fine, and you?
Ken,
loving life, the only way to live it.
I want you to remember, Ken, back about 10 years ago or so in San Diego. Carla says she knows you.
Okay, well, check this out.
Oh,
about 10 years ago in San Diego, there was probably a lot of nights that I don't remember, so please don't hold that against me, but I'm sure it was great.
Shayna, are you still on?
No, it's Kat, and you're welcome to stay on. Kat, you going to join us for the rest of the show?
I didn't know if I'm the only girl still hanging out,
You're more than welcome to stay with us. You're on with Ken Shamrock and the rest of us.
Absolutely. Stay on.
Yeah,
the more the merrier.
So, Carla, give us a rundown. See if Ken remembers it, even though maybe it was one of the nights he does remember.
It could have been one of the nights that he didn't remember, but we...
No, I have your baby.
One of the nights...
And you know what? Someone said that earlier. How old is your daughter? And I'm like, oh, my gosh, shut up.
Which one? Which one? The real one or the fake one?
No, it was cool. We just had a fun night hanging out in the Gaslamp District at Blue Tattoo. I had on a really... What'd you say?
I said already I know that was bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that was it. And then I've had some, times where I had gone, to the Lion's Den to watch you guys train and, different things like that. And that was it. Nothing else. We don't have a love child or anything like that. So it's all good.
Okay, well, that's good to hear.
You were sweating for a second there, huh?
No, trust me, I know better than that. I always have a good time, but I would never, ever not know whether I had a love child or not.
No, nothing like that. Nothing like that.
No. But listen, San Diego was some good times, and then the training times there, some of the guys that I brought up through those times, some real studs, some real good fighters at that time. And if you remember back in those days, it was NHB. And there was really no other schools in San Diego except the Lions Den. Now you look at it, they're on every corner.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's all that there was the Lions Den back then. And everybody used to go and congregate and, this and that. So I definitely remember that. I was a huge fan. But now, I'm sort of transitioned to boxing, but I'm sort of, kind of dabbling, back into and getting into MMA and different things like that, but I was a huge UFC fan back then. And a fan of the Lions, of course. Mm-hmm.
I love boxing, that's when I was over in Japan, I was fighting over there. The first thing I learned was Muay Thai, right? So I learned how to kick and punch, but then when I got back to the States, I worked with some guys from boxing, and I'll tell you what, man, the technique, the skill, and the angles and stuff that you learn from that is just beautiful. It's like dancing, and when you get that down, man, it is such a beautiful thing to watch.
Hey, Frank, tell us a little what's going on with you right now. I want to go back and work our way forward, but, what do you got going on right now? You haven't been in the cage in a while, so.
Did he just say Frank or Kent?
He said Frank.
But I want to say this. Whoa. I'm not confusing you with Frank Shamrock. I'm confusing with Frank Stea, our other co-host. I've been saying Frank and all day wrong. So.
Ken, I'm here, Ken. There is a Frank on the line.
I just want to make it really clear I'm the bigger one.
Well, Ken, I'm actually at the age. So I saw you growing up. I actually wasn't following the UFC when Frank did his thing, so I'm much more familiar with you from the early days of going to the going and renting the VCRs and watching the first few UFC. So I would never confuse you with the other Shamrock.
Well, that's the original, man, and I tell you, people, we talked about earlier in the show about NHB and MMA, and that's truly you talk to any of the guys in the very first fights, and when people start mentioning MMA, the first thing that most of them will probably say is like, that's not what it is. It's NHB. It's not MMA. People put that name on there to pretty it up or do whatever they wanted to do to it, but it's NHB, no holds barred. That's where it came from. That's how it originated, and that's what it is.
How was it for you when you first started? You were doing pancreas and all that kind of thing, and then you did UFC. How hard is it to train for something and all of a sudden doesn't have rules like you did, when you're doing the other fights? I mean, is it hard?
No, it was actually pretty simple because, like, when I was over in Japan, it was open hand strikes, and we wore knee pads and shin guards, and, we really on the ground, it was all submissions. We moved more for submissions. Stand-up was open hand, kicks, punches, and throws. But, there was really 15 minutes or 30 minutes, there was no rounds or anything. So that's a pretty good time, pretty long time to go. And you could grab the rope for escapes and stuff, if I got a submission hold. So, the biggest difference, I think, when I went from Japan to NHB and the UFC was everything else I could deal with. The only thing that you really had to work on or really had to really understand the danger of was headbutts. Because at any place, anywhere, on the mat, standing up, you could get headbutted in the nose, in the chin, in the eye. So to me, I mean, that's the biggest thing you had to worry about when you made a transition from any other thing was those headbutts.
Well, and if you're fighting Keith Hackney, I think there's other things you had to worry about as well.
Yeah, well, especially when he was fighting Joe-san. About 30
Yeah, that's exactly. Of course, we all felt sorry for Joe-san at the time, and I think nowadays we all, he got what he had coming. Maybe he deserved a little more than that.
Well, if you actually saw, the way he dressed in Japan with his pink tights and everything, I'm not sure he had balls. That's good. He had to worry about nut shots.
Well, I actually didn't put him out. I was pretty surprised because I definitely would have been tapping out. One thing I read about. What's that?
I said, now when he's just lifting his foot up and he's not screaming or yelling or anything, that kind of gave it away.
Right. Tell us a little about your fight. I talked to the girls about this earlier. You fought Royce Gracie, someone that you were close to. Difference between fighting someone like that and then fighting someone like Tito Ortiz, who you're not friendly with. Hard to focus with friends, or like Shayna Baszler was on. She said she actually gets nastier with her friends. So, what's the difference?
Well, I think the hardest part with that was that, I had actually taken Royce Taktarov in. He was in Dallas training with Guy Mazur, and they worked with him, and Oleg had struggled a little bit. Well, then he had an opportunity to fight in this tournament, and I was obviously fighting for the super fight title. And so I brought Oleg into my training camp, and I worked with him, and I trained with him to, get him over the hump so, he would win this tournament. Well, I ended up fighting 7. I choked him out in a minute and 47 seconds. And then right after my fight, I went and worked Oleg's corner because he had just won his first 2 fights, and now he was in the finals with Tank Abbott. And I remember I was working his corner, and I kept screaming at him, don't quit, don't give up, keep fighting, because they were both exhausted. And then he finally ended up choking Tank out, and he won the title. Well, after he had won the title, he had started mentioning something about, fighting for the super fight title. And I looked at him and I said, dude, I'm the champion. I got the title. And he looked at me and he goes, well, yeah, but maybe we can work something out where, you do this and that. And I looked at him and I said, listen, Oleg, you got 2 things. One, you can either move on, fight in Japan, or go do something else. Or 2, if you get in the ring with me, I'm going to hurt you. And so the whole time I kicked him out of my gym because he took the fight, and I told him not to do that before we fought, that he wouldn't take that fight. One, he knew I could whip his ass anyways, but the problem was I had these guys going over to Japan, and I would send them over there. They would make some money, and then part of those fees would come back into the Lions' Den. So this was a business for me. And so when he took the fight, I thought to myself, how do I protect my interest here? How do I protect, this business venture I have? So if you watch the fight, and it's very clear, you'll see it very clearly, was that I had an opportunity to tap him out with a leg lock, an arm bar, or a choke. But I knew if I got him in one of these submission holds that he wouldn't tap, and then I would break something, and then he would be out of fighting for 6 months or a year, and I would lose money. So what I did do, and you watched the fight, is I said, you know what, I'll knock him out. I figure if I knock him out, at least he'll be able to come back a couple months later. I'll send him to Japan. He'll make some money, and he'll be okay. So that was my whole game plan when I fought him, was to knock him out. Well, the guy had harder hit than a rock. And I remember I knocked him out 2 or 3 different times where his eyes would go back into his head, and then he came back to again. So, I mean, the next morning, and I don't know if anybody's ever saw a picture, but the next morning, this guy looked like the Elephant Man. His eyes were swollen shut. His head was bigger than his butt. I mean, he looked bad. I thought he was walking dead. And but hey, you know what? My plan worked, because like 2 months later, I sent him to Japan to fight over in Japan in the circuit over there, because I booked him over there, and he was under contract with me. So my plan worked, but I thought I'd be able to finish him a little bit earlier. But he had a rock, man.
What was it like in those early UFC days? You know, I mean, now it's kind of so corporate. Everyone has all these huge gyms. But, you know, back in the early days, and the one thing I kind of miss, you know, is this is before everyone was, you know, hybrid and training everything. It was so cool having everybody come in. Okay, this guy's a wrestler, this guy's a ninjutsu guy, and this guy's a, you know, taekwondo. You know, what was it like backstage with you guys? You know, was it all, you know, real competitive as far as the arts go, and what your particular strength was?
It was different, you know. I mean, like now, it really is. It's a business, and you got to be careful. Your managers got to take care of your fighters, because there's so many good fighters out there. And you know, and let's face it, this is a business. These guys are fighting for a career in a way to take care of their family years down the road. And so, like when I fought, you took on whoever they put in front of you. It could have been that night they would change the fight, but you still fought them. You could be going into the next round, and the guy that you're supposed to fight breaks his hand, so they put in a fresh guy. I mean, you could bitch and complain about that, but you know what? In those days, you fought who they put in front of you, and you didn't care who it was. Nowadays, it's a business, and these guys are too good to be just fighting somebody they throw in on you. And I remember just not too long ago, Jones, where he was gonna fight Chael Sonnen, and I remember his manager said, you know, that's a bad idea, and I agreed with it 100%. I know he took a lot of flack for that, but this is a business today, and if you plan on having any success in your career, obviously you take the number 1 contender or the number 2 contender. If that's who they booked you to fight, you fight that fight. But if that guy happens to get hurt and he can't continue on, and they throw in somebody like a Chael Sonnen or somebody on top of that, and you're not ready for that fight, you haven't practiced for that particular fighter, and you're going to take that on short notice, one, it's bad business for the company, for Dana White to even do something like that, and then put his champion down. And then on top of it, for Chael Sonnen to have that opportunity when he hasn't even earned it. There's other guys out there who were in line for that shot that they could have put in there that would have been a better fight for Jones. You know, he took a guy who I thought was probably much dangerous than Chael, which, you know, he made, you know, quick work of him. But, you know, it is different than it was before. You took on whoever was out there. You didn't care who they put in against you, and you did your job. But today, it's different. And I thought it was real untasteful for not only some of the fans, but for a businessman, Dana White, to put down a guy who was their champion and who has showed so much class in his fighting, and he is so good in what he does, to put him down because his manager tells him, listen, that's not the fight we trained for.
Yeah, it's kind of strange with Dana White. I mean, obviously you've had your ups and downs with him. It seems to me almost like he's worried about anyone besides himself being the face or the star of the UFC. I mean, did you find in your dealings with him, like he's kind of, you know, really obsessed with making sure that, you know, he's the number 1 star in the whole organization?
Dana White, and I think it happens to everybody. You know, I got caught up in it, and I know other guys get caught up in it. You know, when you have money, that's good, right? And you can get caught up in that. But when you have power and everybody, you have control over a lot of people, and they need your word to be able to have a career. That's a lot of power for one person to have. And I think sometimes when you get to that position, you forget that you don't have a right to put people down. You don't have a right to control people's future. You're there for one reason only, and that's to try and promote the best fights that you can. And it's not about putting your opinion in on a fighter or this or that. You stick to what you do. Dana White has gotten into a position where he believes that he is bigger than the UFC. He wants to be the guy. When you say UFC, you say Dana White. Dana White challenged Tito Ortiz to a fight one time. I mean, what if Dana White would have fought Tito and he would have beat Tito in a boxing match? Okay, let me say this. You were trying to make money for your business and your company. Why in the hell would you jeopardize beating one of your stars who was drawing you big-time pay-per-view numbers other than your ego on him?
Going back, something that, like I said, I love the old UFC stuff. We've had Art Jimerson on. We've had Fred Edish on. Going back to the early UFC, you lost your first fight with Royce Gracie. Second fight was at UFC 5, right, I believe. Tell us about that. It got declared a draw. Obviously they didn't have judges back in the day. If there were, you would have won. How aggravating was that because I know you wanted the revenge, that you weren't able to get it because it went to a time limit?
Well, back, in the very first one, I really, just as we were talking about a little bit earlier being cocky, I was over in Japan. I was the first foreigner ever to capture a title in Japan. I felt really good. I came into this fight. I remember watching Royce Gracie a little bit with arm bars, different things like that. And then, to me, it looked like a guy rolling around in pajamas. I didn't give him any respect. And so, by doing that, I ended up getting caught in a choke. And I remember myself at the Plethora party, and I remember saying to myself and the people that were with me, I said, that will never happen again. I was so angry at myself for not being prepared, for not taking it serious. And so I said to myself, I promise you that will never happen to me again. And I remember it took me a while because I broke my hand. I was trying to make a comeback on that. I broke my hand, so it pushed me back a little bit. But all the same, I was fighting over in Japan at the same time. I remember I got in there against Royce Gracie the second time, and we never got to fight. I ended up, I tore my ACL, not tore my ACL, but my meniscus, and I frayed my ACL, and I remember shooting it up, and I fought anyways. And then when the Royce dropped out after chemo, put a beating on him, Royce still won, but Royce couldn't come out and fight again. Well, I ended up choosing not to go in there and fight, even though I probably would have won that hands down, but to me, the risk of blowing my knee out was too high, but I would have done it if Royce was there. And so I remember going in and getting it cleaned up a little bit, and then I remember Bob Myers put together a fight called the Super Fight, where there would be no way that Royce could duck me. There would be no way that we wouldn't be able to meet each other, and we did that fight. And I trained for a 2-hour fight. I was willing to go 2 hours, and then I was going to submit them. The one thing they bragged about most was they were the best conditioned athletes in the world. Any place, anytime, anywhere, and it didn't matter how big they were. They could beat anybody. So I had a couple things I was going to prove. One, I was going to wear him out so bad that by the time, however long it took, which was probably about an hour and 45 minutes, hour and a half, which I kind of figured it would take, that he wouldn't be able to lift his legs up, he wouldn't be able to lift his arms up, and then I would slap him around, and then I would tap him out. And I remember that was my game plan going into my training, and that's what I did. I trained for a 2-hour fight. 3 days prior to that event, they go in the room and they sit us down and tell us they're going to put a time limit in. They're going to put a 30-minute time limit in. And I remember sitting there looking across the thing at Royce Gracie, and I was looking at him going, really? Seriously? I said, how does this work? I said, this is completely against everything that you guys believe in. And they said, well, it's just the TV and time and this and that, and they have to put these things in. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I did the fight, but I couldn't change my game plan. I mean, I had already trained for this. I was already locked and loaded. And so there's no way I could change what I had already worked for. So I went in there, and if you watch the fight real carefully, it wasn't anything big. It wasn't anything fast. It wasn't anything explosive. It was about working his body. It was about working his body, working his head, and working him so bad that if you look at it, they put another 2 extra time limits in there. It was supposed to be 30 minutes only, and Hoyt screamed out 3 more minutes. And I said, okay. Then after that 3 minutes, he screamed out 3 more minutes. And I remember Hoyt looking at his brother going, what? Because Hoyt was dead. I mean, he was literally dragging. And if we would have not had a time limit, I would have been able to prove every point in that fight, whereas he couldn't have gone with me with the distance, and I would have submitted him. And then all those myths that they had been screaming and yelling about like monkeys for so long, I would have put an end to it. But unfortunately, they put that time limit in there, and it just, if you watch the fight, though, I was just short of making that happen.
Right. Now, do you think that, they had the whole thing, that no one could beat him, no one could beat Jiu-Jitsu and that kind of thing. Well, since Royce and, if you want to say Hickson before that, they haven't really made the impact in MMA, in the last dozen years or so. Do you think that they've been too hard-headed as far as their overall reluctance to evolve and to incorporate other parts in their game? Because obviously Jiu-Jitsu alone doesn't cut it anymore.
Well, I don't think it's hard-headed. I just think, sports in itself is very, very difficult for anybody to rise to the top and be the best, especially when a sport has been around a long time and you have training methods, you have trainers, and, people start when they're 5 years old now. So it's difficult. There's guys out there who have been jiu-jitsu guys who have made it to the top and been champions, but to have the control and the power that, the Lions Den had at the time and that the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu had at the time, it's very difficult for that to happen today. You may get one guy, and if lucky, 2 guys that would be in the top being able to win all the time at that level. Because the sport has developed so much that there's so many good fighters out there, it's hard to have, 2 guys in one team to be able to do that anymore. So it's not because they haven't developed, because I think that they're not stupid. I think they realize that they have to develop. And if you see what, Royce did with Taktarov the second time around, he worked on his striking, and then he got stronger, and he beat him the second time around. So I don't think it's because they're not developing. I just think it's because it's just now, instead of having 300 or 400 good fighters, now you got 3,000 or 4,000 good fighters.
Right. I want to talk to you a little bit about something that's near and dear to Frank's heart. I think he's still there. I see him on the switchboard. Frank, you still with us?
No, I'm here. I'm here. I just had a few background noises going around. I had to mute myself.
No, Ken, I wanted to ask you about, so then you go over to WWE. You make a huge impact in the UFC. You became a star, to those of the United States who didn't know you. You go over there. Tell us about, the decision to go over there and what your experience was like over there, how they came to you with the character they wanted you to be, and what you thought of that.
Well, back in in that time, it was Bob Myers and Semi-4 Entertainment Group, and they were the ones that brought this whole thing together and put it on pay-per-view, and it was doing really well. Well, then you got politics that got involved in boxing and commission and all that stuff, and so they came in there and they started trying to chop the knees out from Bob Meyerowitz. And Bob Meyerowitz was always in court in every city we went in. He was always in court trying to figure out why he was having so much problem to get this event up and off the ground. And a lot of it had to do with the politics in the commission, in the boxing commission. And so it was just eating him and draining him alive. So there came a time where, really he could not afford to keep doing this and paying the guys that were on top of the money that they needed to be able to support their family. So I had an opportunity during that time. Bob Myers came to me and very professionally, said, listen, I'm running into some walls here, and I'm struggling with some of these things, and I just can't pay you the money that you need to support your family. And I said, well, Bob, I really appreciate that, but I've got to go and do something else until this thing gets fixed. And he was very polite and very respectful and very professional about it, and he allowed me to move forward to do something else. Well, during that time, I was able to get involved with wrestling and be able to showcase some of these moves that I had developed over the years into something that we call entertainment and pro wrestling. And so when I did that, I was able to go into wrestling and be able to develop this character in which Vince McMahon created for me, which was me, myself, and be able to go in there and actually showcase the world's most dangerous man. And it went really well. I was able to draw a lot of those fans from MMA into pro wrestling, and then when I went back into MMA, I was able to draw all those mainstream fans back into MMA.
Right. So am I wrong here then? I thought and this has been years since I would have read this, but I thought I read at some point that you were angry with the character they had made you, that you didn't like, that they made you seem a little more crazy or stupid, I guess, than you really were. Was that right, or am I way off?
No, actually, I love the character they made me, and I love the matches and stuff that I had gotten, but there was some angles and stuff that they wanted me to do, and I felt that it was not in my family's best interest. There was one where my sister, who played my sister, her name was Ryan. Shamrock, which is what she played, right? And at the time, I had a 10-year-old kid and a 7-year-old kid and a 5-year-old kid and a 1-year-old baby girl. And they wanted me to, because I was running around beating everybody up for picking on her and this and that. Well, then the real reason they wanted me to have this problem was because I wanted to be with my sister sexually. And, at 10 years old as a kid, and at 7 years old as a kid, and at 3 years old as a kid, going to school, all I could see was my kids getting in fights because people were telling them that their dad is weirdo. So I didn't want to do it, and I ran into some problems with that, and, that was really the point where I needed to make a move. And listen, trust me, it's not like that's not entertainment, because it is, and I don't have a problem with that. But during that particular time in my life, I could not do that, and so I had to make a decision.
So, just out of curiosity, then, who are some of the guys? I want to get in a minute the Nasty Boys thing, which obviously was a big deal. But did any of the guys give you a hard time and kind of want to challenge you to see how tough you really were when they came in there? And if so, who were some of the legit tough guys back then?
A lot of the guys, which I got to say, they were all really good, and I had a good time while I was there, and they were all real professional. There was a few times, we had our run-ins, but most of the time it was all pretty professional. And during times when we weren't wrestling, like when they were setting up the ring, they were done setting the ring, a couple guys being there working on some stuff, and I remember Bradshaw came up to me one time, and there were some guys outside the ring, Billy Gunn and Road Dogg, and some of them were screaming at Bradshaw, "Go ahead, jump on him, Bradshaw, get him. Bradshaw would go, "No, man." So I remember laying on the ground, and I said, "Listen, Bradshaw, grab your best hold, man." I said, "I'll let you get whatever you want, but within 30 seconds, I'll tap you out." And so they were all laughing and said, "Get it, man, grab him." So he jumped on me, and he grabbed me in a headlock, and he was squeezing on real tight. And within about 15 seconds, he was tapping out. So, there was those moments where these guys wanted to know, but they knew who I was, and they understood, and they respected me, just as I respected them and what they did. But they all wanted to learn also.
So you got to give Bradshaw a little credit, though, because I've always heard the stories he likes to pick on the new guys, but, it's a little different he's picking on you. So at least he gave it a shot as opposed to picking on some, the Blue Meanie or somebody.
Well, Bradshaw's a good guy, though, you know what I mean? Ever since I was there, he was always a good person, and along with all the other boys, And I rolled around with Blackman a few times, and, I showed him a few things. But a lot of the guys were really, really good people. And if you watch now, as opposed to before the Ken Shamrock days of pro wrestling, before they had one or two rest holds. Now you see hundreds and hundreds of submission holds. I mean, it just opened up the door for people to start doing and creating new things with submission holds.
So now obviously you did it before, and you weren't the first one, and Dan Severn and, tons of other guys have done both. Obviously King Mo right now is making the transition. What do you think about him doing it, and do you think that's going to open the doors now for a lot of other guys to follow him?
Well, like I said, I think that it's a great opportunity for any of these guys to, obviously be in MMA and have some fun and opportunity there. But at the same time, being able to go back into pro wrestling and do that also, to me, I think you know, have fun, man. You live one time, right? I mean, this is the world we live in where there's so much pressure on people trying to tell you what to do, when to do it, and you know, how long you can do it. And, you know, I've always been that person that said, listen, man, you want to try something, or if you got an itch to do something, don't wait, man. Do it. Have fun, man. You live one time, and go for it. Enjoy life, man.
Do you, if you had to take one of the guys under your wing from back then in the WWE, who do you think would have made the best MMA fighter?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I've seen quite a few guys in there who I thought that had the ability that, you know, if they had spent some time in training, that they could do well. But I think probably the one that I thought had the best opportunity would be Blackman. I thought Blackman could wrestling, good boxing, but he just didn't have enough experience or enough training and experience in the submissions. But I thought if he put the time in, he would have.
Hey, I want to turn this over here. Actually, I want to ask you for the millionth time. I know you've talked about the Nasty Boys a million times, but you know, there's so many versions of it out there. So I want to get your thoughts on that, and then I'm going to turn it over to Carla because I know she has a couple of questions. But tell us, you know, what really happened, you know, how that all turned out.
Well, I was on the road. I was working for NAPW, North Atlantic Pro Wrestling. It was George Scott, Nelson Royal, and I remember the Nasty Boys had been brought in, and, you know, I had gotten along with them a little bit. They were a little obnoxious, but whatever. It's wrestling, you know, it's characters and different things. So, you know, no big deal. We got involved. We went to this show, and after the show, we went to this place called Plum Crazies, and it was in Carolina. And I remember we were there, and I was with a friend of mine who had his girl with him. He wasn't a wrestler. He helped set up the ring, and, you know, kind of a road guy. And I befriended him, a nice guy, and he had his girl with him, and she was, you know, she was put together pretty well. And I remember we were sitting there, and they you know, they were pretty drunk. Knobs, the blonde one, big tall one, was standing up next to her, and I remember he kept reaching over and grabbing her tit. And I remember my friend was, you know, he wasn't a big guy, and his girlfriend kept slapping his hand away. And, you know, he did this probably 2 or 3 times, and finally my friend had said something to him, come on, brother, please, man. And he looked at him, and he kind of pie-faced him and said, oh, shut up, dude. And so I was sitting next to him. This is my friend. And so I jumped up, and I told the dude, I said, you know what, man? I said, that's it. Enough, dude. That is it. Next time you touch him, break your hand. And he looked at, oh, you're a tough guy, huh? And I said, you know what? I'll be who I have to be. And I remember the other one came around. Sags came around. So what's happening, Goofy? Whoa, what's going on? You know? So they started trying to get in my face, and that's when I lost it. So I threw my drink at him, and I went after him. Well, as soon as that happened, the bouncer came up behind me, and he grabbed me because they see what was going on. He brought me into the bathroom, picked me up off my feet, and brought me in the bathroom. He's a pretty big guy. He brought me in the bathroom, and he said, kid, man, calm down, brother. They're out of here. We kicked them out. When you come out of here, just be cool. And so he let me out of the bathroom, and I came out, and they were gone. Well, I have, you know, I mean, I was pretty pissed off at this time. So we were all staying in the same hotel. So I went to the hotel. I knew what room they were staying in. I remember banging on the door, and they wouldn't open the door. So I remember I kicked the door in. And after I kicked the door and I came in, and the first thing I saw was I seen Sags laying on the bed, passed out. And that's the last thing I remember. Well, from what I heard from the doctor's report was that, because the police report, that tall one had hit me in the back of the head with the steel phone. You know, it's one of these hotels where they had a steel plate on the back of the phone, and when I came through the door, he smashed me in the back of the head. Well, as soon as I hit him in the back of the head, I went down on the ground, and they started putting the boots to me. Both of them. What's his name wasn't even passed out. It was kind of a setup. So they jumped up, put the boots to me, broke my sternum, broke my eye socket, put me in a concussion, and almost killed me. I mean, I died in the ambulance going to the hospital. And so I was recovered. It took me a year to recover, and then I recovered, got back to business. And I remember the whole time I was pissed. And these guys had just left the territory and went into the WWF. And I kept saying to myself, if I ever see them guys, I'm going to kill them. And I had this thing driving with me for so long. About 4 years later, I run across knobs, right? And I'm in the WWF at this time. And I'm with Road Dogg, and I'm with Billy Gunn, and I'm getting ready to check in at the ticket gate, and there he is, standing there. And all of a sudden, it was like blowing the lid off my head, just blew up, right? And my face was red, and I remember Billy going, "What's wrong with you, man?" And I remember walking right up to this guy, and I was going to smash him, right? I remember Billy standing in front of him, "Don't do it again." And I'm looking at Knobs, and I'm going, "Man, I'm going to kill you, dude. I'm going to kill you." And he goes, "Man, dude, it's been a long time, man. Relax, man." And I said, "Man, I'm going to kill you." And I remember Billy had to grab me and pull me away from him. As he's pulling me away, right, he takes off. I mean, literally takes off running. And so Billy finally gets me calmed down. We get checked in, and we start going up towards our gate. And we get to our gate, and I hear this voice, right? And there's two of them there. It's Knobs and Sags. And I hear this guy go, "Man, what's wrong with Shamrock?" There's probably about 20 boys sitting there, right? "What's wrong with Shamrock, man? Somebody's got a chill pill, man. He walks around thinking he's all fat ass or something, man. He better watch himself." He doesn't see me, right? As soon as I hear it, Billy goes, "Oh, shit." I fly out after this guy. I jump over the chair. I grab him. I spin him around. And I look at him. I said, "I'm standing right here, little bitch. What do you want to do now?" I said, "I'm going to freaking kill you." And I remember him standing there looking at me, right? And I'm getting ready to tear into him. I mean, I am literally getting ready to tear this man apart, right? This is the thing that happened right here. And I could not believe my ears after all the shit he talked, after all the stuff he said, and standing in front of 20 of the boys. He turned. He had a bag in his hand. He turned like he was going to try and hit me, right? He drops his bag. He turns his back to me, and he says, "If you hit me, it's a federal offense." I went, "Are you freaking kidding me? After all this time, after all this thing, after you talking about being such a badass and whipping my ass, you were punking out like this in front of everybody?" I was like, oh, my God. It couldn't have been more better that it happened that way. Because I could have beat his ass, I'd have went to jail or whatever. But for him to do that in front of all of the boys sitting right there at the gate, pussing out like he did, couldn't have been more better than anything that I could have ever done to him. I just lost all the anger I had at him. I looked at him and I said, how friggin' pathetic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You know, you could have beat his ass, you know, but the pain goes away, but making him look like a chump in front of everybody, you know, it probably worked out the best for you.
Well, what it did was it completely confused me, right? Because I'm sitting here thinking I'm going to rip this guy apart. And he turns to me. Here's this guy who's 6'5", 6'6", 270 pounds. And he turns his back to me and says, "You hit me, it's a federal offense." I was like, what? What? How do I respond to that?
All right, you just got a few minutes here left. Just, you know, a little bit as far as the later stuff. You came back. You know, as far as taking the time off from your MMA career to do the wrestling, do you kind of now look back and you wish you had been able to keep doing the MMA because that way you could have had the bigger fights and maybe done more with your record?
No, I didn't get that question. What was that?
Well, I was going to say, do you kind of regret, you know, I mean, obviously you didn't have a choice. You know, you went to WWF for, you know, for financial reasons and you didn't have the opportunity to keep doing the MMA. But do you kind of regret in a way that you lost a few of those prime years to fighting?
No. Like I said earlier when we were talking, is that you live one time. And I really believe you got to do things that, you know, is fun, going to make you happy. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you know, that you're successful, and don't do something stupid and ruin your career. But, you know, I thought I did very well in my career. I captured a lot of different titles, a lot of different places. I was always main event. From the time I stepped into the ring, I was always main event, always semi-main event, and nothing less. I was always on top for 13 years, whether it was, you know, anywhere. And so I got an opportunity to go to pro wrestling and do something there and have some fun there because, you know, obviously I wouldn't make the money I needed to in MMA, and I did that. And I did it because I thought it would be something that would be fun and entertaining for me. And it was. And I look back on it now, and I thought it was a great move because not only did it was fun for me, and I thought it was a good move for me because I went public, was that it also helped MMA because when I turned around and went back into MMA, I brought thousands and thousands and thousands of fans with me into MMA that didn't know MMA at that time.
All right. Do you think that you don't get the respect that you deserve as a legend of the sport, that people always try to focus negative than, as opposed to the positive and the things that you did do?
No, no, not at all. Listen, this has been going on ever since there's been sports, or ever since there's been politics, or ever since there's been people in power. It is what it is, and it's never going to change. You can't please everybody. And I understand that, man. And I did something great in the sport, something that no one will ever be broken. I was the first. I was the first in Japan. I was the first here in the U.S. I was the first one to cross over. I did a lot of things first. And to me, I'm not sure about who I want, to show me any of that respect. I know what I did. I know what the record books show. I know the accomplishments that I've done. I'm not asking for anybody to give me anything. I think I've earned whatever I've gotten. And if I don't, hey, listen, everybody else writes the history books. Everybody else is going to give you props. And there's going to be a million different ways it's going to come out. Hey, whatever. I know this. This is one thing I will take to my grave. I accomplished what I needed to accomplish when I was there. I became the champion in everything that I did, and I had fun doing it. And I respected my sport. I respected my fans. And you can't ask for more than that. And however they want to write those books is completely out of my control.
All right, let's just finish on this, because you've been great. And, obviously we could talk to you for 3 days. You have so much to tell. But just finishing out with this, what are your plans going forward? I mean, is there any... Are you completely 100% done fighting? Any chance you went back to wrestling? Because obviously you still got Ric Flair, still trying to wrestle in his 60s. What's next for you? Or are you just ready to move on to something else completely different?
Like I said, God bless Ric Flair. As long as everybody's still having fun and fans still want to see him and he's capable of doing it. You live one time, and I say go for it. But for me, it's this. I love promoting fights. I have some options and some opportunities to be able to change MMA a little bit, be able to make it a little bit more exciting, a little bit faster by putting in some of the rules that I have developed to improve the sport and improve the intensity and the quickness of the fights. I also have a way of trying to bring back the original days of MMA where you've got different types of fighters fighting each other, and they're not all the same. Coming from different sports, football, rugby, basketball, hockey, having these guys all come in and do a reality show and see which one of these guys can adapt to MMA the best. But it goes back to the same kind of concept in the beginning days where you have different guys come from different disciplines. Now you got guys coming from different sports to see which one can develop the best. Then do a pay-per-view and see which one of these guys can actually become an MMA fighter. So there's a lot of other ideas I have. There's another one out now that we've actually discussed a little bit about, fighting for families that have kids that have terminal cancer, families that have kids that come back from war who have been damaged, and having the fighters spend time with these families, and then when they spend time with these families, they go in there and they fight for these families, and then after the fight's over, the company itself donates half the proceeds to these families to help cover these bills. So these are all these things that I have got. I helped develop MMA where it's at today. That fighter reality show is my concept. The way that I showed Dana White to shoot these fights because they were dying, they were going under, I showed Dana White how to make it more exciting, how for these guys to shoot these fights so people get more interested in it. Don't think that I can't do it again with some other ideas with other companies. Man, they made a mistake by not keeping me in the loop because I will develop other things that will be exciting. And UFC, they couldn't have done those things without myself and other fighters, and they chose to push guys like myself aside when we were the ones that came up with all the ideas to make the event the way it is.
Yeah, that's the one thing I kind of, like I had mentioned earlier, I kind of missed, the old days because it was so cool, especially back then because you didn't have the internet and that kind of thing. But when it first started, it's like, okay, how's Ninjutsu going to do against Taekwondo, against Judo, against something like that? So, I think there's definitely a market for people being interested in seeing that kind of stuff, whereas opposed to, now everybody's, at least trained in something. And then, so basically, you're saying we're looking at Ken Shamrock, the promoter, in the future. That's what's lying ahead for you. Then sounds like
Shamrock, the promoter. Ken Shamrock's going to bring back MMA and the excitement of MMA. We're going to bring it back, man. The fans are going to see some new rule changes. They're going to see the fights being faster. Hey, just wait and see, man. Don't think that I can get it once, I can't do it again.
I would never put it past you. So last question before we let you go, just, any chance, I mean, it does seem like the UFC kind of has turned their back on the, on the old-timers and the real legends of the sport like yourself and some others. Any chance that, you guys can ever patch things up and at least have some kind of, friendly relationship?
Listen, if people know me, they know who I am. And just like with Tito Ortiz or anybody else I ever fought, I don't hold grudges. I do things because it's part of who I am, and it's business, and, it is what I do. But when it's over, it's over. I have no grudges. I don't understand how a company where they had so many people develop their company and help get to where they're at, that they can't drop things and be able to shake hands and say, listen, we need to use these guys because these are the guys that are the face of this company. These are the guys that actually put money in our pockets and gave us $1 million cars and a couple $1 million homes. Let's give a little bit back to these guys. Let's not be hogs. Let's not be pigs. Let's turn around and help these guys who are out there trying to make new business and do other things because they can't get involved with what they've built.
Right. No, I hear you. Like, I'm like I said, I'm a huge fan of all the legends, the ones that got there. That's why, I've brought on the show, even people that weren't successful as you, like Fred Eddish and Art Jimerson and those kind of folks. So I definitely appreciate, the guys that started it and paved the way for the rest of us. Like I said, back in my high school days, I was renting the VCR tapes and watching all you guys. So, there's definitely lots of us out there that really appreciate and we'll never forget the things like, that you and Oleg Taktarov and the other guys have done. So we really appreciate that. And like I said, I could sit here and talk to you for 3 days, obviously, but we really appreciate having you on. Anything else you'd like to let the folks know about, where they can follow you, and what else you got going on?
Yeah, our website's up at Shamrock.com. And actually, we just rebuilt it. We'll have some more clothing stuff. We've got pictures going up. We've got a new series out called Tough Guys, which will be guys like myself and Dan Severn on a poster, even myself and other people that are not involved in MMA. But it'll be called what we call Tough Guys, and it'll be a series every couple months. We'll have new ones out, and also too with these new promotions we got going. Keep your eyes open because I am in the process of stepping it up and trying to figure out ways, which I've already done, to make MMA more exciting and figure out how MMA can get more involved with charity and how we can get back to people who are in need. So there's a lot of different angles I'm coming from and a lot of different places I'm coming from to push MMA forward so it's not the same old stuff again.
Yeah, I hear you, and we definitely would look forward to that. I'd love to have you back on any time, especially when that stuff's coming up and you want to plug that. And we could, like I said, I could talk to you anytime. So we'd love to have you back, and we'll be looking forward to all that stuff, and we really appreciate your time tonight.
Well, listen, I just want to also, too, say to my fans, thanks for the support over the years. And I know a lot of times people get upset because I say things and this and that, but I just want people to know everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a right to an opinion, and it don't make them right or wrong. I don't say I'm right. It's an opinion. I could be wrong. Maybe it's just the way I think, but it's my opinion. If you agree with it, great. If you don't, that's okay, too. But in the end, it's all about having a good time, and it's all about trying to get to the same place, and that's to be successful, and that's for everybody to have a good time.
Well, it is refreshing to hear people with their own thoughts. Too many times today, that's one thing that John Jones gets ripped about, a lot because he tries to, be really unopinionated, doesn't want to give his thoughts or anything. Kind of like Derek Jeter in baseball, same thing, Nobody dislikes him because he never says anything that makes anybody mad. So, there's certainly a place for people like that, but also there's always room for people like you that are going to tell them how it is. And not everyone, like you said, not everyone has to agree with you, but it's great to know, your real opinion instead of, what you think we want to hear from you.
Yeah, and again, like I said, that's what makes it entertainment. It's for people to be able to speak their mind and then not get their heads chopped off for it.
Right. All right, Frank. Frank, I did it again. I'm sorry. I was going to say we missed Frank. We've had all kinds of technical difficulties tonight. Frank and Carla both ended up getting dropped, and they couldn't get back in here, so we apologize that they weren't able to jump in there. Follow Carla at The Real Carla J and Frank at ATG Radio. And Ken, we really appreciate it. Again, like I said, love to get you back on. We will look for all the stuff you got. Sounds like you got a lot going, so we'll be keeping our eye out for that. And anything we can do to help you promote in the future, let us know.
All right, listen, I appreciate you guys. And like I said, hopefully in the future we'll see UFC and some of the people involved there drop their guards and start embracing the people that got them where they're at today.
Yeah, like I couldn't agree with that more. Yeah, definitely think, I mean, obviously the sport's completely different now than it was back in the day, but there's always, always room to remember the guys that pioneered the sport, and you certainly were, one of, if not the biggest name of them all. So, yeah, hopefully they do.
All right. God bless.
All right, Ken, thanks so much, buddy. Appreciate it, and you have a great evening, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay.
All right. So that was Ken Shamrock, guys. Thanks so much to him. Incredible interview. Like I said, I could talk to him for 4 hours. Appreciate his 45 minutes. And also thanks to the CFCC guys. Started off the show. Look forward to their fights this weekend. And then, of course, in the middle we had 7 girls from the Invicta Fighting Championships. Thanks so much to them. Nick Deli, Rivera Kalanick, Julia Budd, Jessica Penne, Tisha Torres, Shayna Baszler, Stephanie Frausto, Julia Budd, all those guys. Thanks so much for them coming on and definitely support women's MMA. They were great to have on. So appreciate it. That's our show for this week, and we will talk to you again next week.